Hi, everyone. Welcome to another episode of Untempered. I'm so excited about today because I got so many questions about this. And today we're going to be discussing ADHD and how I have personally been able to manage it and how I was able to manage it without medication and how I was feeling when I did take the medication. So, if this resonates with you and you have ADHD, this episode might be really helpful for you to feel like you can compare your experience. Maybe everybody is different, but sometimes it really helps to take tips from each other. I will tell you what worked for me and what did not work for me. This, of course, doesn't mean that what worked for me will work for you. So keep that in mind. Also, keep in mind that I am not a medical professional. I have zero medical background. This is strictly based on my own experience and my trial and errors. So if you're curious about that, this episode is going to be for you. Honestly, I feel like every single day I check my phone every 10 minutes 5 times, not actually knowing what I'm checking it for. This is not even with the culprit of social media. I have to do lists and brand new notebooks and post it notes, and sometimes I'm just like, I probably had 3 tasks, but in my head, it feels like I have a million. There's multiple open tabs. We're not quite sure which ones are more prioritized or needed. And then in the end, I feel like by the middle of the day, I constantly feel a huge crash, an exhaustion, an overwhelm of how much I had to do, but I didn't get done. And then in the end, I look at my day and I feel like I finished 10% of 100 jobs rather than 100% of any jobs. So I want to share with you my experiences on every level of where I've gotten, every phase that I've gotten to, and how I dealt with it. According to professionals and to psychology, is that you have ADHD because maybe at some point in your life you felt so unsafe when you were younger that you started to dissociate. So the brain actually starts to get purposely distracted by other things to be able to cope with a unsafe environment. I totally relate to that. I think in my house, I can really remember there was a lot of screaming and a lot of shouting. And I just feel like I think the energy was so heightened for me where I've had to kind of disconnect from the world. Now that I'm older, I'm safe. I still feel like my brain has built that habit where I almost purposely procrastinate things, purposely get distracted, purposely feel like I need to eject from a task that I know I need to do, but it just feels like my brain goes, nope, we're not doing that. Let's think of a million other things but the thing that we need to do. I have tried medication. Medication didn't really work for me. I'm not demonizing it, and I'm not saying that this is going to be your experience either, but for me, I felt like the medication heightened other parts, gave me side effects that made not only my ADHD worse, but my ability to basically navigate difficult emotions so much weaker. I would have a really bad crash after the medication would wear off. So the crashes would look a lot like depression. They would look a lot like this heavy slump where I felt like my body was a huge tree trunk that I just couldn't move. I would have even more scattered thoughts, and I felt like the anxiety peaked to a point where I was almost thinking of things that just would never happen. So, creating irrational scenarios and obviously getting myself really on edge for no reason. So, as much as I was actually extremely productive and really happy about that because I was getting so much done while on the medication, pros and the cons just it didn't add up. Like I thought to myself one day, I remember having this thought and thinking, I would rather not be productive and really have to push harder, a million times harder, rather than be super productive and end up super down and having severe anxiety. By the way, let me note another side effect with medication called Vyvanse. My gut microbiome was so shot. I mean, I had no ability to digest food and I was constantly bloated and I felt like my whole entire rhythm was off. My circadian rhythm was off. I couldn't really sleep very well. So for me personally, medication had too many side effects. And I decided to discontinue it. The side effects weren't worth it. However, wow, managing ADHD without medication might be the hardest thing ever. But I keep telling myself, you know what? I can do hard things. I would rather do that than be in a mental state where I constantly have to feel like I need to play catch up with my dopamine. It felt draining. And you know what? I have met people who have thrived on medication and have been on it for years and they feel amazing. And you know what? I'm jealous. Like, good for them. However, I have to say, I think I really like the way things have been going recently. I feel like managing it without medication actually made me mentally and emotionally more resilient and stronger in the face of any kind of adversity or anxiety or stress. When something stressful would happen in the day, I feel like I would constantly go into a complete panic when I was on the medication. Because my solution based attitude and my problem solving was so on that I felt like things had to be solved right away. And this brought my frequency and my anxiety to a point where I was like definitely overwhelmed. I think being calm as a person with ADHD is the most incredible thing you can achieve. Now, hear me out. With ADHD, it feels like a roller coaster. The higher you go, the lower you're going to go. And what I've seen and what I've interpreted from all the experiences that I've had is when I've had a stable day where there hasn't been any highs, it hasn't been low lows, where I've maintained a rhythm, have been the days that I actually have been able to manage it the most. So, what I mean by that is I don't over caffeinate anymore. I used to drink probably 3 to 4 cups of coffee a day, and I would always ask for an extra shot, or I would get like a black Americano on ice, such a strong coffee. And I realized that all that did was actually give me a boost for my scattered thoughts. I became more scattered. I became a little bit more mentally sporadic. So I couldn't really pinpoint what task I needed to get done. So instead, I was just getting a ton of ideas of different tasks and they were all just merging together and nothing was actually getting done. So this was a game changer. Lessening the caffeine intake, and actually now to the point where I really don't ever have caffeine. Maybe I'll have a matcha, but that's about it. I think that actually created this stability. And when I didn't have the crashes, I didn't have the anxiety, and I didn't have the need to consistently go and distract. And you know what? With ADHD, I feel like when we distract, we really distract. Like we hyper focus on something. We have this like addictive behavior where once you start to scroll or once you decide that you want to reorganize something and you end up making it even messier, you end up getting stuck into that task so much and you just waste a bunch of time. So having that stability was major. Another thing is, and this is genuinely the closest thing I have found to natural medication, it has been making sure that I work out. I urge you to find a way to move your body as much as possible because there is so much built up energy and we want to focus it on something, but we're not quite sure where. So we end up doing 10% of 100 tasks and kind of realigning by moving the body, moving those toxins around, getting rid of that lactic acid. It was more about consistency rather than just intensity. So it would just make my energy levels more consistent and I would drain a little bit of that overactive anxiety. And it would just kind of set me off for such a good start to the day. Now, this is going to be hard because if you're starting to let go of coffee and you're going to be wanting to work out, you're going to feel slumpy. You're going to feel heavy. It's going to be hard, but this is the whole point. Nothing is going to be easy right away. You're going to have to push through this moment. So, cardio and weightlifting, light weightlifting for me worked so well. Manual stretching and taking deep breaths just to start the day has literally just gotten me to a point where I'm like, okay, now at least I know exactly how to arrange my thoughts in a way where I can at least know what's the highest priority and what's the lowest priority rather than waking up and being like, oh my God, I need to do so many things. I have 150 things. What am I going to do? Where do I start? That usually just ends up in a exercising was the best dopamine release and it improved my focus and I was able to actually for hours and hours channel creativity because every time that I was working out I feel like ADHD people are so creative and if we have the outlet for that, oh my God, it's incredible. I get all my amazing ideas and all my creativity for the podcast and for my work all while I'm on the treadmill. And so sometimes I'll just grab my phone, I'll just write the ideas down. This brings me to the next thing that was so important for me. It was whenever I had this like burst of thoughts and they were a little bit scattered and erratic, I felt like writing them down, even in, sometimes it started by writing them down in random places because God knows ADHDers love buying a new notebook. And I would just write them down. It just felt like it was filtering and sifting a bunch of these overactive thoughts that are just kind of floating around, bouncing around. It just kind of gave me an outlet and a way to pour them out onto paper. And that was slowly healing. Another really important thing was sleep. And this is why medication didn't work for me, because I slept so terribly when I took the medication that I felt like I was just playing catch up. And it's like if I didn't, it ended up becoming like I was relying on the medication, because if I wasn't sleeping, then I would wake up feeling so tired. So I'd have to get to take the medication to be able to start to focus again. And it was like a vicious loop. It was a vicious cycle for me. When I actually took a break from caffeine and I took a break from the medication, started to exercise, oh my God, my sleep was, it just improved so much. And I have my Whoop, so I look at my sleep and I see my sleep stress. And my sleep stress during, while if I had the medication in my system was so high, I would always get these crazy nightmares, erratic nightmares that just made no sense. And then I would kind of be in this like light awake sleep where I don't really feel like I'm sleeping. Now I'm sleeping so well and I'm waking up so much more refreshed. And when you wake up refreshed, you don't need more caffeine. So, do you see how it all kind of works together? The next one, do not eat sugar. I know it's so hard because if you have a sweet tooth, it's basically an addiction now, and you're gonna have to wean off sugar for a while. So, this is really tough what I'm telling you to do, but I promise. I wish I can show you via virtual reality how much better your body's going to feel so that you can work hard on getting there. But sugar creates such small spurts of energy and huge crashes. And when you have ADHD, you do not want to keep crashing and building up and crashing and building up and crashing and building up. It's absolutely exhausting. So, a high protein breakfast, limiting your sugar, eating regularly, which is also really hard to do with a medication. And the most important thing I learned is you can get rid of the spiral of going up and down, up and down, up and down when you do these really important things that really are small. They're going to feel really big in the beginning, but I promise once you build the habit, they're small things and they're all going to create this new routine for you. So, yes, stabilize your blood sugar, and this is going to improve your focus and your mood dramatically. One more thing, supplements. Okay, so this is the thing. I'm not a doctor again, and I have tried supplements, and there are a couple supplements that I will tell you shortly in a minute, which really I did feel the difference with. But just remember, you can't take supplements while having a crappy lifestyle. You can't take supplements and expect it to just to be like medication and just kind of change your life. Supplements are meant to be added to a healthy lifestyle. They're meant to be like a decor for your already beautiful living room. You know what I mean? You need to actually have the discipline to have a healthy diet, to be drinking water, sleeping, and exercising, and then adding supplements to that. That's when they work. For me, I took omega 3s and I took ginkgo biloba. I found out about this from Dr. Amen and I actually genuinely felt the difference. I do take NAD, and that also gave me a crazy boost in my focus and my mood. So let's say now you've gotten healthy, right? You've done these parts, and now you're like, okay, well, I've worked on my body. How can I work on my mind? What I found super important was making sure not to actually rely on your brain. And I'm sorry, but you know what? The ADHD brain just wants to forget things, and we need to stop trying to make it remember things, because honestly, that's quite painful. And then by the end of the day, you're like, oh, you can't build trust within yourself, because every time you try to make your brain do something and it pushes back, you feel awful. So, what I do is I rely on everything like timers, task apps, I take breaks, and I try to put reminders on my phone, reminders to eat, reminders to do some tasks. Sometimes I even, if I'm having a day where I honestly feel like it's just starting with a day, I was just like, oh my God, there's so many distractions, there's so much on my mind. I have these tiny little yellow post-it notes. And sometimes if there's a task that I really need to do, instead of just having a list of a long to-do list and having this list that looks overwhelming, I'll put one task on a post-it note on my left hand and I'll just stick it there. And I will literally just like go around the house or feed my daughter or feed the cat, and then I look at it, and it's like just having it there makes me finish that task. Like, okay, today we are reading at least 5 emails in the next 10 minutes. So I just look at that, and then finally I'll go to my computer and I'll read those 5 emails. This will give me the encouragement. Once I get to that 5th email, I get that little boost. I go, wow, I got that done. Okay, cool. Get rid of that post-it. Let's put another one. This might be extreme, but honestly, it has been so helpful for me to be able to constantly have something with me, because no matter how many notepads I buy and how many to-do lists I write, sometimes I just lose them. So I made sure to try to keep one to-do list, one list, and then have my post-it notes for the things that are important or that are time sensitive. Another thing is taking breaks. I used to just be like, okay, now we're going to sit down and we're going to be hyper focused and we're going to work for 2 hours, but that just doesn't work. We need to take breaks, and we need to give our brain that calm. Remember, the stability. I found this thing called the Pomodoro Technique, which is 25-minute sprints with breaks in between. And that is so helpful for an ADHD brain. The time management, usually traditional time management, it just doesn't work for us. So if you do the Pomodoro Technique, you just time yourself at 25 minutes and then you give yourself a small break. You time that break, you go get something to eat, you get a snack, and you try to stay off of social media or anything that is addictive. And honestly, that basically is just a great way to time block and have a buffer in between, and giving yourself kind of compassion and allowing yourself to feel like it's not all at once. So let me tell you what didn't work for me. What didn't work for me is the traditional mindfulness techniques. For example, when somebody says meditate for an ADHD brain, this is literally like giving me an empty room where all of my thoughts are going to be put on loudspeaker and I'm going to hear them completely in a deafening way. I'm not saying meditation doesn't work. Yes, it does, but not the traditional meditation. I had to start with very small baby steps into meditation. So it would start by just being able to sit still for 5 minutes and just do a slow breath work, and then build up to 10 minutes, and then build up to 20, and then build up to 30 if you can. But even if you only can do 10 or 20, I think give yourself grace, because doing 5 sets of 10-minute meditations is much better than doing one long meditation where you just feel anxious, you can't really get it done, and then you give up halfway. So those tiny little parts of the day where I actually can be able to tell myself that I can sit still, it could be a break in between work tasks. It's so beautiful. At first it was torture, but then it just became so grounding. And then I started to kind of be able to align those thoughts. And rather than all of them being all in one small box, it felt like it was more thought, 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 rather than thought. Somebody out there knows exactly what I'm talking about. This is what's helped me so far. And you know what? Let's be completely honest. I still have ADHD. This is not a cure. And I still struggle with it every single day. And all of these steps were super hard. But because I see the improvement and I see how much growth I've been able to do, I have quit coffee now for, I think it's been over 2 months. I see how much my focus on calm, stability, rhythm has absolutely changed the way I see my day to day life, that I don't even think about relying on medication. And I wish that for you too. And I'm sure there's going to be days where I'm going to regress, where it's going to get hard again, and I'm going to have to remind myself all over again my post it notes, my journals, my meditation. And I know it's going to be a constant struggle. However, there is also something so beautiful about having ADHD. It's the fact that we are so capable of an immense amount of creativity. We can hyper focus on something and we can learn so fast. If you like, I learned how to edit my videos by myself. I learned how to do my lighting. I learned how to work a camera. I can read half a book and just be super focused on it. And it's amazing, you know? And even though I get distracted, it's when you're interested in something, you hyper focus on it and you really become so good at it. So there's something beautiful about having ADHD. And that's what we need to bring out rather than try to mask it and constantly try to fix it. So again, if medication works for you, then great. But this is my own experience. I hope that this was helpful. And if you guys have any questions, please feel free to just ask me in the comments, and subscribe to the channel if you like this video. I like to share personal stories like that, because if I had heard this a year ago, I think it would have been really helpful for me. So I really hope it's helpful for you. Thank you so much for watching, and I will see you guys next week.